Hey everybody, it's Bjorn from WPLearningLab, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make a two-column form using Contact Form 7, which is a very popular plugin for WordPress. And the form we're going to make is a really basic one, just so I can show you the concept and how it's done. And the form looks, or will look, exactly like the one I'm showing on my screen right now. And we're going to make that from scratch, so let's get right into it. If you don't have Contact Form 7 installed yet, I'm going to do that really quick and show you how to do that. We are currently in our WordPress dashboard on our test site. All we have to do to install the plugin is hover over Plugins on the left and click on Add New. On the next page, search for Contact Form 7 and hit Return. And the first one that shows up in the top left is Contact Form 7. I already have installed. If you don't have installed, it will say Install Now right here. Click on Install Now, then activate it, and then we can get started with the rest of the tutorial. So once it's installed and activated, they add a contact tab on the side menu over here, and we're going to click on Add New to create a new form. And then you can choose to add new. The default language is read from your WP config file, so whatever your default language is on your site is going to be the one that it pulls up, or you can select a different language, and there are quite a few to choose from. Hopefully the language you need is in there. If it's not, you may be actually able to get other translations online, but hopefully the language you need is in there. So I'm just going to click on Add New to do it in English. And here we are with a blank contact form. And first we're going to enter a title. I'm just going to say, or call it two-column contact form. And it pre-fills a bunch of information for us already, just the basics of any form that you'd see online. So this form will actually just be a one column, because you can see from the HTML just paragraph tags for each field, and those are just going to be in one column on your page, but we want to make it into two columns, or partially two columns. And the way we do that is in the HTML itself, and we'll get to that in a second. First I want to show you the mail component of a form. This form tab that you see here, this is the form that will show up on your page. And the other side of that is when someone submits the form, somebody has to get an email, and it's probably going to be you, and that is configured in the Mail tab, which is the second one over. And this is where, again, when you start a new form, this is all pre-filled, and as you add more fields, you can make adjustments and edit this stuff. But this is the component that sends the email. This is the information that you will receive when someone fills out the form. We're going to customize this a little bit in a few minutes when we make our fields, or when we add fields to make our form two-column. So we're going to come back to this in a few minutes, but first let's work with our HTML in this form to make it a two-column form. Now what we have to do, there's a variety of ways of doing this, but the simplest way of doing it is adding some divs. Those divs are just the HTML tag for a section, and we're going to have two sections at the top. We're going to have a first name and a last name section. We're going to have a phone number and email section, and then down below is going to be the subject and the message. So let's just do that right now. And I'm going to pause this video while I input the information, and then I'll unpause and explain what I did. Okay, welcome back. Here is the completed HTML for the two-column form, and I'm going to go through each line and show you what it is and what its purpose is. And then we will tie in the CSS afterwards, which the CSS is actually what makes it into two columns. The HTML is just the core structure with tags and classes and IDs. And then with the CSS, we turn that into two columns. So in our very first line, we have a div, and that div has a class called clearfix. And what we're going to do with this is clear floats after the form has been put into two columns. And what a float does is it moves an element to a certain side of the page. You can either float left or float right in the CSS. And I'm not going to get into detail as to how that works technically. It's out of the scope of this video. Just understand that when you float left, things go to the left. When you float right, things go to the right. But if you don't clear that float, you're going to have elements wrapping around the left and the right floats where you don't want them to wrap around. So that's why we have a clearfix div. And that div ends down here, so it wraps the entire two-column area, which is this part in here. And the first part, the left side, or the left column, we have wrapped in here, which is the first part is a div, an opening div, with an ID of left, and we're going to float that one to the left. and the closing div tag is down below. And in that column, we're going to have the first name field and the last name field. And then the BR tag is a line break, a hard break. So it's going to put those two onto separate lines, so the first name and last name will be on top of each other. In the second div, the one that floats to the right, we have the ID of right. And then within that column, we're going to have the email and the phone. What I did was I added some custom fields, which I'm just going to show you how to do really quickly as well, so that you can add whatever fields you want. Maybe you want to have a third field in here called how did you find us, for example. How did you find us? And we want to have that be a text field so they can type in their answer. And the way you do that is you click on this text button up here. If you check this box, the field is either required or not. If you check it, it is required. And the name of the field is the name that we're going to see in our form. I like to make this descriptive. So if I come back a year later to change the form, I know what this field is for. So I'm going to type in text-find us. And the default value is a value you have in there if nobody enters a value. And so there are some cases where you want to have that in a form, others you don't want to have that. The placeholder text is the text in a field before they click onto the field to enter it. You've seen this before online. Usually it involves first name, last name, address, and then when you click on the field, that text disappears, and then you can just type into that field as needed. For this one, the field requires the author's name, is a spam safety thing with the Akismet plugin. And then you can add IDs and classes to the fields as well, which we're not going to do in this case. But you can do that, and that allows you to apply CSS directly and uniquely to certain fields. So all we're going to do for this one is have text-find-us, and it's going to input this piece of shortcode down here that we see into our form. And if we do add values, like say we add a value here, called how did you find us, and we click on this placeholder box, it then adds code down below. As you can see now, the placeholder is set to this. So eventually when you get really good at Contact Form 7, you won't even need this little form builder because it's always the same format and you can easily create your own fields on the fly. For now I'm going to delete this and I'm going to insert the tag, and it inserts it right here. And now the form is done. So we have, just to quickly review, this is the left-hand column, this will be the right-hand column. This wrapping div is used to clear the float so that the subject and the message and the send appear below, and they're going to be in their own full width column. And that's really all there is to the HTML, and this is below the video as well, so you can just copy and paste it from below the video. And if you want to add other fields, the other field options that are available are listed up here. So if you want to add a field, just click on one of these buttons, fill in the information, and then see what happens. And then go back and tweak it. And that's the best way to learn, just experiment, click buttons, do things. Playing in this form area, you're not going to break anything. If you have a live contact form, just make a dummy form and just play around with it and learn Contact Form 7 because it's a very powerful plugin that you can use for a lot of things. So after we've finished all this, which we now have done, we're going to click on Save. And now that it's saved, we're going to click over to the to the Mail tab to customize the email that is sent after someone fills out the form. And what you'll notice at the very top is this section right here where there's a list of shortcodes. These are actually all the shortcodes that are used in the form you just created. So these shortcodes that you see here throughout all these fields are replaced by the information that the user inputs on the form. So the very first field, the to field, this is where the email is sent to when someone clicks on submit. The from field is who is it from. And in this case, it has your name, which is, as we can see, one of the default settings that's not actually listed up here. So if we keep this in there, it's just going to return blank and never show anything because that field isn't actually in our current form. So we want to make sure that all the shortcodes that we see in this form are also listed up here. So instead of name, I'm going to copy and paste the first name shortcode and put it in there to make sure that that populates that person's first name, and I can add the last name as well if I want. So it's going to show their first name and then the from. I want to have their email in here, so I'm going to choose the your email tag, and I'm going to paste it right here. So then it will populate their email address right there. And for the subject, it's going to be the subject that they entered in the form, which is a shortcode that we have, so that one's okay. Additional headers, this is hidden in an email, a regular email, and when you click on, for this header, when you click on reply to, it's going to reply to whatever email was submitted in the form, which is what we want. And for the message body, we have again your name, which is not a field that we have. We have first name and last name, so I'm just going to copy these two, copy them both at once, hopefully it doesn't break anything. Looks to be okay, put a space between them. And now it's going to, in the message body, it will be from first name, last name with their email address. It's going to have their subject. And then the message body, which is the body field, the main field of the contact form. But I also want to add in here, before the message body, how did you find us, and phone number, which are the two fields that we had additionally, aside from these ones that are in the template right now. So the how did you find us, this text that I wrote in just appears as text in the email. It doesn't change. What will change is what they entered inside this field, the text-find-us, and we're going to paste that in here, and whatever they entered in that field is what's going to show up in this location. And for the phone number as well, whatever they entered for their phone number is going to show up in the phone number location. I'm going to copy that in there. Now if we don't do this customization, the form is just going to keep the defaults that we saw earlier when we added the new form. And if you made changes to your fields, this is going to be all messed up, and it's not going to function the way you want it to. So that's how we customize the email. And you actually have more ability to customize. So you can actually send a second email by checking this box down here. And this little note that you see here, this email is often used as an autoresponder, which is a message that is sent back to the person who submitted the form. So it will be a message to your email from, you probably have your name in here. Maybe I'll put Bjorn Allpass from, this is our test site. Just going to put in my real email address, learninglab.com. And then you can fill in this information, and you can say in the message body something like, thank you for submitting your message. I will review it and get back to you as soon as possible. And then you can go ahead and also fill in the information that they input in the form here if you want. And then this will be sent to the person that filled out the form after they fill it out. So just to recap, the first one is generally one that you send to yourself or to someone on your team. And the second one, which is optional, is one that is sent usually, it can be sent to somebody else if you want, but it's usually sent to the person that submitted the form. And an important note to make is if you want to send to multiple people, you can add multiple email addresses here by just adding a comma and then typing in multiple email addresses. So jimbo@jimbo.com is going to get a copy, and Jane@tarzan.com will get a copy too. So you can actually put your whole team in there, all the people who need the email in here, and they will all receive a copy of that form submission. I'm going to delete these for now and then click on Save. So now what we've done is we've completed the HTML for our form. We've completed the mail component for the form, which is going to send the message afterwards. And now what we have left to do is to create the CSS and put the form shortcode onto a page. I'm actually going to put the form shortcode onto a page first so you can see what we have currently. And how we do that, we click on this blue field up here and it'll highlight the whole code automatically. We copy that code, and I'm just going to make a new page. This can go into a post as well, or this can go into a sidebar widget on your WordPress template. I'm going to put in a new page. I'm going to call the page Contact Us. I'm going to paste that shortcode in here. Click on Publish. And then once it's published, I'm going to click on View. And we will see the form as it stands now. As you can see, it's all one column because we haven't done our CSS yet. We have the HTML in place for 2 columns, but we don't have the CSS in place yet. So how this will look is in the picture you saw earlier. We're going to have first name, last name, how did you find us in the left column, and then email and phone on the right column, and subject and message on the lower columns. And as you can see, there's some spacing issues here, which we'll deal with as well. But first do the CSS just to get the columns done right, and then we'll deal with the spacing between the forms. So let's go back to our WordPress dashboard. There are multiple ways you can add CSS code to your website, and it often depends on what kind of theme you're using. We're using, on this demo site, we have the Aveda theme. So you can go to Appearance and Theme Options, and the Aveda theme has this for sure, but a lot of other themes have this option as well, where if you scroll down, it's down on the Aveda theme. It might be somewhere else on your theme, but at the bottom of the theme options for the Aveda theme is a tab called Custom CSS. You click on that tab, and you can enter CSS code here that is then loaded throughout your site. So we can style the form using CSS we input here, and that CSS will appear on every single page on your website, which is usually fine for smaller bits of CSS. But if you have large amounts of CSS code that you want to keep to specific pages, you're going to want to use a plugin that just inserts that code to a specific page. And those plugins exist. They're out of the scope of this tutorial, but they do exist. What I'm going to do now is copy and paste the CSS code into this field, and then you can see it, and we'll go through it line by line. And you can also copy and paste it from below this video, and then tweak it as needed. Okay, there we go. We're back, and we have all the CSS code that we need in the CSS file. And in the title of this video, you probably noticed that we're making a responsive form, which means it adjusts to the screen size of whatever screen that someone's using. And there's a specific way we make that happen. I'm going to go through that in the CSS code. So the first thing we're going to do is, actually I'm going to open the contact form code again so that we can reference back and you know which part of the code I'm talking about. So the very first thing we're going to do is go back to our CSS, and as we can see, the very first step, or the very first ID that we select is the left ID, which if we go back to our form, is this piece of code right here, and this is the left ID. And in CSS, an ID is selected using the pound, and a class is selected using a period, like this one down here. So for the left, we want to make the width of that left column 47% of the full width that's allowed for that element. And the width that's allowed for that element is determined by the width allowed for the page. So if we go back to our live form, this width that you see here from the very start of this field to the very right hand side, that is the maximum allowed width. So we're going to have the left hand column be 47% of that width. And I'm going to tell you why 47% in a second. And we want to have it float left, which means it goes to the left, and the margin on the right, meaning the space on the right, is going to be 6% of the allowed width. And the pound right is going to be the right hand column, which if we go back to our form is this section with the email and the phone number. Go back to the CSS, that is also 47% width. So when we add up the 40% for the left-hand column, 47% for the left-hand column, plus 47% for the right-hand column, plus 6% for the margin, we have 100%. And then after that, we have the clearfix class selected, which if we go back to our form, is this wrapping div that wraps the whole 2-column component. And what we have is a pseudo selector, meaning it's the clearfix is followed by a colon, and then the pseudo selector called after. So the pseudo selector after, all this information is applied after that clearfix div. So after the 2-column component, we have this first section, which is content, and then this piece of code here, which basically just adds a space. That's all it does. And then we have display block, which basically just defines what type of HTML element this area will look like, and a block makes it look like a paragraph tag. That's really all that is. The height is 0. This is the height for the space component afterwards. And then everything below it, we have this clear both, which clears the floats from the left and right floats that we did earlier, so that everything below it is aligned properly. And the visibility of this element is hidden, meaning it takes space on the page, but you can't see it. And the overflow is hidden, and the margin bottom is 10 pixels, so we're going to have 10 pixels of space between the 2-column component and the rest of the field. I apologize if this is a little fast. It's kind of a crash course in CSS, but really the core of this video is showing you how to do this 2-column form. And you can just copy and paste this code and adjust it as needed and do research on these elements as well. Yeah, sorry it's so fast, but it's a necessity for this video. So the very last selector, we have clearfix, which we select again, and it's also set to display block, which is that whole 2-column section. As we see in the form code again, this whole section here is clearfix, and we display that as a block, meaning it displays as pretty much a paragraph tag on the page. So now when we save this CSS code and we go and refresh our form, we should now have a 2-column form. So we'll save it and see what happens. Okay, it's saved. We go back to the contact page, click on refresh, and then we have the 2 columns. We have first name, last name, and how'd you find us in one column, phone and email in the other column, and then down below we have subject and message that are the full width. And as you recall, the 47% width that we had is the area taken up from the left-hand side of this field to the right-hand side. This space in between is 6% of the width, and then this side from the left of the field to the right of the field is also 47%. You can play with those widths and adjust them as you want. With entering CSS selectors unique to each field, you can actually define width for each field specifically, but that's beyond the purposes of this video. So the last thing we want to do is fix the spacing between last name and how did you find us. And what defines the spacing is inside of the HTML for the contact form, in this case. And this line break is what adds a line break below each element. And what I've done actually is added a space in here where I shouldn't have. So I'm going to delete that space, click on save. And then once it's saved, go back to the contact form, click on refresh, and now we have that space in there just as we wanted. Now this form looks a little unbalanced because we have 3 fields on the left, 2 on the right. You could balance it more by having a 3rd one over here. It's really up to you. So there's one last thing that we will need to cover, and that is the responsive element of this form. So responsiveness means that it just adjusts the screen size that the visitor is using. And one really simple basic way to test the responsiveness of something on your website is to change the dimensions of your browser. And we do that just by clicking and holding when we see the double arrows on the sides and watching the form size change. As you can see, the fields are adjusting in width as we shrink the browser width. And what this does is, on a phone, for example, where the screen is much smaller, it will shrink the size of the fields to fit the phone screen, so you're not affecting usability. And the way we did that was, if we go back to the CSS, which is right here, by assigning percentage widths for each of those elements, those widths always stay at whatever percentage you set, no matter the width of the page. Had we defined pixel sizes, so if we said here 300 pixels for each one, they would stay at 300 pixels. Even if the screen size needed them to be smaller, they would stay at that width and they would not adjust to that screen size. So having percentages is, in this case, a really simple and easy way to make sure your form is responsive to the device that someone is using. So I encourage you to take the code from below this video, paste it into your contact form on your site and replicate what I've done here, or make adjustments to it, whatever you think is necessary for your needs. If you run into problems, just copy and paste the code below this video and I'll try to help you out. And that's it. In this video you learned how to create a 2-column form using the Contact Form 7 plugin for WordPress and make it responsive. I hope this video helped you. My name is Bjorn Allpass from WPLearningLab. Please make sure you like this video if it helped, subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our social media feeds, and check out WPLearningLab.com where we write about WordPress every single day. Talk to you soon.